I read some internal comment in our applicant tracking system this morning on somebody that we were interviewing. And I think the comment was from Dave, and he was like, this person scares me in a good way. Like, I don't want to be a B player that ends up just hiring C players, people that I'm not scared of, right? I want to bring somebody in who might make me look bad because they know things that I don't. And it's impossible to harmonize that perspective with a culture of long toes, right? Long toes is like, we've already got this figured out. We're bringing you in so that you can just fall in line and become a cog in the machine. We need more cogs, right? We're not hiring cogs here, right? We're hiring people with brains that know a thing or two. And that's why we're bringing them on board.
You want to feel empowered to make things happen. So I'm just curious, like when you came to levels,
Sure.
like what was going through your mind?
So like many people that end up coming on board at levels, like I became a little bit of a fanboy once I uncovered, some of the culture videos like this one, listened to some of the podcasts, got to know some of the softer side of the company that's not necessarily evident behind the blogs or the product itself, but the personalities and the personal values that drive people here. When I came in, therefore, I had really high expectations, but I would say they were surpassed by what I found, because one particular aspect was bracing myself for joining a crowd of highly educated, talented, fancy people. The prestige that Levels has kind of in the zeitgeist makes it sound like we're just a bunch of highly opinionated, high functioning, juggernauts in our respective areas of competency. And I do think that's pretty true, but I would have expected that to come along with, strong opinions, strongly held, people building their turf, establishing their fiefdoms. A lot of what happens in most normal human organizations, people being like, hey, you're a new guy, don't touch my stuff, Instead, I came in and I found a very different atmosphere than that. People were very approachable, very easy to work with, agreeable, while still being incredibly, competent and talented and well-informed.
How did when was the first time you really felt that short toes or that autonomy feeling at Levels?
Yeah, I think it came in probably a few days in the first week. On other culture videos and blog posts and whatever, we've talked about our onboarding board. We have a Kanban board that all new hires go through. It's a huge checklist. It's a major, a fire hose, just dose of here's the culture and here's how we do things here. And you're going to go talk to somebody. And week 2 or 3 or whatever, you're only going to use Loom to communicate. And it's a bunch of hoops to jump through. And it's great. It's the best onboarding I've ever seen at any company. And so one of the early to middle kind of tasks in there was something like, there was a card for your first assignment. If I remember correctly, this was the one that basically said, you gotta go into this onboarding literature, the template or one of the documents that we just made you read. And if something didn't fit right, you should make a change to it. So, I read that card and I can picture, at the emotional level, I kind of tiptoe out of hiding, out of the safe space of doing onboarding on my own, and have to stick my neck out and be like, I think this could be better. Is that okay? Is my head gonna get chopped off? I think my original observation during that first week, by the end of it, I was like, boy, this is a lot. I think it seems like this progression of week 1, week 2, or whatever we had at that time, maybe it was left over from an earlier stage of the company where there were less things packed into each week. And gradually, I can imagine they get filled. People add things. And now week 1 has enough, onboarding to-dos that it could fill 2 weeks, maybe, let's say. And so I mentioned this on some thread or whatever. And Ms., who, shows up in some form or another in every video that we do or podcast that we do about culture. Ms. was like, great, I agree. Why don't you get with so-and-so? I think it was Matt at the time. And Matt had been there, I don't know, for 3 or 4 months or something. Ms. was like, get with Matt, go make changes. So, I made several changes there in my first week. and kind of kept Matt in tune with what I was doing. And he was like, yeah, this looks good. Yeah. And so that was kind of my first experience of like tampering with the stuff that was already in place before I started and realizing that that's what we're supposed to be doing. That was my first short toes experience.
I love that it was about onboarding too. That might be the best part of the story is that it wasn't like 2 months in, it wasn't a month in, wasn't even a couple weeks. It was immediate, and truly anyone can contribute to any part of our company at any time. Like, I think it was something like nobody's responsibilities are sacred. It's like, see something, do something, right? And or like maybe that founder's mentality. Think of things as they should be, not as they are, and then go make them happen.
Yep.
And all those things seem like a really unique perspective, but I think you in particular, especially coming from like the customer facing side of it and then moving to engineering, I'd love to let you talk a little bit about like why those things are important.
You should bring in people that you think know things that you don't. The message of you can change things here and we want you to is so, I think it's so countercultural compared to the companies I've worked at, which have been between about 200 and 1,200 people. 200 is certainly big enough for things to start to calcify. People get their little kingdoms and they want to maintain their frontiers and their boundaries, right? Collect their taxes and so on. And so it's very counterintuitive. Even after that first week, I think the message still had to be reinforced that this is all up for debate. Everything that you see before you, everything that comprises levels. And so I was reminded of that again because Ben wrote up a memo about a culture of experimentation. And it was, again, just encouraging us all to take this seriously. Like, if you think something can be made better, or we need to do something new, like, give it a try. No one's going to slap your hand for it. And I think that goes against a very common an inference that people make when they come into a new place. The general version is someone comes into a company, sees the existing systems and processes, and assumes that because these are working, they have been thoroughly thought through, and you should just learn to follow them rather than debating whether they should be changed. In the engineering world, this is even more important because code that, is working now and was written, I don't know, a year ago, well, the natural assumption is like, I just need to learn how this works and get used to it. I shouldn't challenge the way it was designed because, of course, it's been working. It's been running for a year, so it must be good, right? No, it's not good, right? It was probably shipped in a hurry, and inadequate testing was applied to it, and there were some design compromises that were made at the time. And anyway, the company and the product is at a bigger scale now, so the original design is probably underpowered for what you need now. And it's really just a form of status quo bias. Like, new engineers, and I think new hires in general, need to understand that what got us here is not going to get us there, right? We use that phrase a lot when it comes to hiring talent, personalities of leaders and founders and stuff, but it also applies to processes and engineering code and aspects of culture. All that needs to be, reconsidered, hopefully continuously, or else the company loses out on important opportunities.
You're right. These are things that must be revisited often. We have a new company every 3 to 12 months. Just assume right. It's something that is just going to continue to happen, and that means that we need to revisit everything. The entire thing, the entire company, everything's written in pencil. And like, from your perspective, being in this world for more than a few years, is there anything in particular that stands out in how we can continue to make sure that we never lose that part of our company culture?
I think the secret sauce to making short toes stick around is people, and especially senior people and leaders, adopting a permanent stance of humility. I was very impressed at my 60-day review. I was talking with Andrew, who is our technical founder, or CTO. He's the most engineering of the founders, whatever his title is. And I was asking him what he thinks he ought to be doing as he looks forward into the next, say, year of how the engineering team is going to change and how the company's needs are going to change. Like, what does Andrew need to be doing specifically? How do his duties need to change? And one of the things that struck me was he said, I try to keep my identity small. In other words, I'm not attached to a particular set of responsibilities to make me worthy as a leader or a figurehead or whatever I need to be. He expressed, this nimble outlook of, I have a lot that I can offer in different places, and I'm going to be on the lookout for where my skills and hours need to be invested, and that can change from week to week or month to month. That's not, I don't want to misquote him or make it sound like he has no other worldview besides I'll just do whatever's needed. I'm sure he has much that he could add to that, but I think that in the counter case, in the counterfactual, the modal case that we keep talking about, where people get long toes and projects and processes become calcified and they're hard to change and people get offended or whatever. I think it's because people get attached to their identities and they get attached to their Legos. I built this and I'm really proud of it. How dare you come in here and tamper with it? And instead, a posture of humility basically acknowledges, well, what I said a minute ago about engineering designs, right? The thing that you shipped a year ago that has been working just fine in production for the last year, it had compromises at the moment that it was shipped. And if you're not honest with that as the author of whatever fancy feature that is, well, you're just kind of fooling yourself and you're misplacing your self-worth in an unstable ground, something like that. So, if instead you just say, well, look, I did my best, I shipped the thing, and it would be great if someone smart who's not me came along later and fixed it or made it better. I mean, that's a much more scalable, sustainable outlook. And I think that attitude is what we need to continue socializing throughout the company to make sure that is the air we breathe by default.